Retro Now.
Hi, this is Emily Swallow, the Armorer in The Mandalorian. You're listening to Dennis and Jay on Podcast Stardust. This is the way.
Welcome to Podcast Stardust. This is the fully armed and operational podcast dedicated to Star Wars news, reviews, and discussion. I'm Dennis Keithley.
And I'm Jay Krebs.
And TTFIF. Thank the Force, it's Friday. That means it's time to look at some Star Wars news. But Jay, before we get into the latest from the galaxy far, far away, you remind everybody where we can find around the internet.
Sure, you don't have to go too far away to find us. We are on Instagram and Facebook at Podcast Stardust.
All right, the dish is aligned, the signal is boosted to maximum output, the shield is down. We are now broadcasting to the galaxy. So up first, we have a bunch of new teaser spots for the Skeleton Crew, as well as some behind-the-scenes stuff for Skeleton Crew that you can find over on StarWars.com. If you want to find these teasers for yourself, you can either go to Star Wars site on Instagram, or you can go look them up on YouTube. Most of them are in both places. I didn't even realize they're on YouTube. I watched them all on Instagram, and that's why I put the links in our notes there, Jay. But we'll kind of touch on all of these. They largely include a lot of stuff we've already seen, and there's a few new things that are in there. But just off the top, I'm going to have to make a confession. These little teasers have actually gotten me more excited for Skeleton Crew than the official trailer did. And I'm not entirely sure why that is, other than I think they kind of portrayed more of the fun that this show must be going for than the tone that they did in the trailer. But what did you think?
No, I completely agree with you. And I had mentioned this the last time we had talked about the most recent trailer that was released, was that I just wasn't feeling the excitement that I felt like I should for this show. And this
Mhm.
definitely has me more on board because, like you said, it just does encapsulate that feeling of fun. And you get a little bit more of the flavor of perhaps what the show is going to be like, at least on an overarching, view of the aesthetic, if you will.
Yeah, because the trailers that we've had so far have really leaned into this. There's something mysterious going on, and we talked about kind of the non-Star Wars Earth-like environment of the neighborhood that they're in, and just the showing up in detention in school and that type of stuff. And this really leaned into that brand of humor that we associate with Star Wars. It's not the sole element, but it is an element of
Mhm.
Star Wars. And no, I really just dug it. So I've come up with my own titles for all these because they didn't have any on Instagram, but you'll get an idea of which ones we're talking about. The first ones I called the Jod teaser trailer, and of course features the character that Jude Law is playing. And my big takeaway from this one is one of the kids says to him, "You're a Jedi, right?" And then he kind of looks up and nonchalantly says, "Of course." And just something about the delivery of that line, it was absolutely perfect.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, because you wonder if is he really?
Mhm.
Or is he just really kind of making them believe this, or what's the true story here?
Right. And a lot of the stuff we're starting to get from Lucasfilm and Star Wars right now is that he's not everything he appears. And even
Right.
though there's been images of him, pulling keys over to himself, apparently through the Force and stuff like that, that there's something else going on. And, this is some sort of a ruse. And, yeah. So, anyways, it'll be curious to see how that goes. But I, again, these little teasers, I didn't dislike the character before, but now I'm really excited to see him online. One of the comments I've been seeing is that in all this stuff that's come out is that it's kind of a Jack Sparrow and Star Wars type of a vibe people are getting.
Oh, okay.
But what do you think of that? You agree or?
I can see where that's coming from, and I didn't wanna skip too far ahead, but I did appreciate what Jude Law had to say about his inspiration for the character and his origins with Star Wars as a fan himself growing up,
Mhm.
and just the idea of, the Han Solo playing into it as well, but I can see the Jack Sparrow side of
Yeah.
things.
Yeah.
Kind of, just a scoundrel.
Right. Kind of the smartest guy in the room, even though he may not appear to
Sure.
be. Uh,
Mhm.
all right. So the second one I've titled "That Was Amazing," based off of one of the lines that is said during the teaser, and these are all short, like 20, 30 seconds, if that.
Right.
We get to see more of the ship. They're going through hyperspace. We get a lot of the kids screaming and carrying on and things like that. A lot of space action here. And again, it's where they choose to put their focus here. And the ship and stuff like that is, of course, much more of a Star Wars element than the neighborhood
Mhm.
is. So I really appreciated that one for that reason. Anything there stand out to you?
No, I would agree with you. And I will say, I'm still a little put off by the very earthly tone of the neighborhoods and the
Hmm.
suburban life. And as we get into, later on in the news story too, talking about the round table, that's something that kinda comes up, but no, this is as you said, with these little 20, 30 seconds, it's nice to see the Star Wars in Star Wars, and that's where that's really exciting, as you said, just those elements that really truly are Star Wars, so I'm hoping we get so much more of that.
Yeah. And speaking of some of the mundane elements that we've seen, this third one I've titled "Don't You Ever Want to Do Anything Exciting?" And it kind of starts with an aftermath of a day at school.
Mhm.
Before they start over the ship, they go through hyperspace, but then it redeems itself by showing them fighting some sort of a monster. It looks like a giant crab of sorts, and I'm kind of piecing together a couple trailers to come up with that conclusion there. And then we see some of the kids firing some of the ship's cannons. So, we can all relate to that. I think being a kid and being in school and daydreaming about doing something more exciting here.
Oh, for sure.
So yeah, I mean, to your point, I'm with you. It's just kind of I really need to see what they do more with the neighborhood stuff because it looks very 80s, and there's not necessarily anything wrong with that, but I'm in it for the Star Wars,
Right.
as you've been saying.
Right, right. And I guess the biggest thing that I'm trying to maybe reconcile this with is just the fact that not every planet, not every experience is like what we saw at Tatooine, but
Right.
that's what feels like growing up Star Wars.
Hmm. Indeed, indeed. Okay, and so the fourth one I've titled "A Crew of Murderous Pirates Is Coming" because that is exactly what Jod is screaming at the beginning of it. We get a shots of all the various pirates, including Vane, and then and others in there. And then we kind of see the kids jumping around and on a bed, and they've got some bizarre clothes on. And Jod is screaming at them. A crew of murderous pirates is coming, and then it's like he gets their attention. He says, "Did you hear any of this I just said?" And one of the kids says, "Yes." "What did I just say? Did you hear any of this?" Is the response. Such a great, fantastic, witty bit of banter. That is exactly what a 10-year-old would say.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, and you just feel the parental frustration setting in at that point for sure.
Right, and then the final one, and I haven't checked today to see if there was any more, and there might have been, is kind of a compilation teaser. Again, a lot of stuff that we've seen, but we got shots of the kids' speeder bikes in the streets. Another image of Jod potentially using the Force. We get to see some pirates, and then there's a couple X-wings that show up in this one. So again, another nice little teaser there, which gives us again more of the Star Wars elements that we're used to.
Yes. Did you notice though that in this one he says there's a crew of murderous bounty hunters coming? So you wonder if
Yeah,
that's kind of his line for everything to warn the kids. Like first there's a murderous pirates and then there's murderous bounty hunters and then there might be murderous something else. Or is it
yeah.
just you know what I mean?
Yeah, and I was a little confused because then we got images of the pirates after images of
Right.
the bounty hunters thing. So I was like, well,
Mhm.
which is it? Or did you have that line recorded two different ways and used a different version for these two different teasers? So
Ah, yeah, could be.
who knows? Okay, well, that's it for those teasers, but we have a couple of articles and features over on StarWars.com. The first one, and I really like this one, is about Nick Frost, who is doing the voice for SM-33. And he described it as a peg leg pirate droid that has a rat living in one of his eye sockets. Frost goes on to describe the character as a charming middle rogue with a heart. At the same time, he's kind of bad to the bone. And then he says further, I love the fact that he looks like really scary and fearsome. And despite how he looks, the kids still like him. He looks like a horrible pirate. And I think to make him nice and cheeky and lovable as a character that people warm to, that was a nice thing for me to try and do. And then with regards to the critter that lives in the eye socket, he said he likened the relationship to a Star Wars Ratatouille. I think a lot of the whimsy that he finds in him malfunctioning and kind of enjoying it. So um, I thought that was fun. I haven't even seen an episode of this, and I think the droid might be my favorite part of it already.
Yeah, and I love the Star Wars Ratatouille reference. I
Yeah.
think that's absolutely perfect, and you know me, I just love me the droids, so
Mhm.
I'm super excited about this one as well.
And then we also have an article about Jude Law playing Jod Na Wood. That name is never going to get easier to say.
No.
And it goes on to point out that although we saw Jod Levitate in the first trailer for the series, Jude Law is being coy about how he speaks about the character ahead of the debut, and he goes on to mention that he's conflicted and is the word he used to describe Jod. And he says, what inspired me most about playing Jod was the playfulness of those first three films, the heroes at the heart of those films, and the way they perceive the galaxy. Ultimately, though, Jod is a survivor, which kind of reminds me of Jen Urso, and with
Mhm.
that description.
Yeah, I agree, and I will say one of the young ladies reminded me very much of Jyn Erso as well in those teaser trailers. But, one of the things that hit me, and I have to reconcile this obviously once I watch the series itself is but I know that for Jude Law's character, he ends up with these kids sort of as a mistake of fate.
Mhm.
But then again, what is it about his character and his desperateness, if you will, that makes him want to be part of this crew with these kids or wants to keep these kids on the crew with him. And I know that that question will be answered, but I can't help to think that, okay, what is does he have an ulterior motive? And maybe that's the beauty of how this is being set up is that all of those things will, be answered for us. But I can't help to think, but okay. What's this guy all about?
Yeah, and I think you're right. I think this is from the outside, and again, we've seen all of between all this footage, like 4 minutes of that of the entire series. So there's all kinds of things that can happen, but your use of the word or phrase ulterior motive, I think, is probably what's happening. It is a trope, right? Where you got someone who shows up, he offers to help, but he's really got this ulterior motive. But over the course of his association with the heroes, the heart of gold shines through. I mean, that's Han Solo for crying
Right.
out loud. That's
Yeah.
a classic Star Wars thing. And so I kind of get the feeling that's what we're going to see from Jude. He's telling these kids that he's a Jedi when he probably isn't, and that he's going to help them when there's something else that he has in mind. It could be the ship that they're on, and or something that they've got that he needs, or maybe there's a reward for getting them home.
Mhm.
We've seen that in prior trailers as well. This anguish that the parents have about the kids being missing and stuff. So
Sure.
there's lots of possibilities there. But I think you're right on. I'm guessing that we are going to see some version of he has an ulterior motive, but by the end of the series, he comes around to being their friends and just doing what's best for them at his own personal expense.
Mhm. And to your point too, I mean, that's a very Jack Sparrow kind of a thing, if
Uh huh.
from the movies.
Yeah, definitely, definitely.
Mhm.
All right, and then the last feature that they have over at StarWars.com right now is a filmmaker roundtable featuring John Watts and Chris Ford, who created the show, and then David Lowery, Jake Schreier, and Bryce Dallas Howard, who've directed a few of the episodes. And this was just kind of fun to watch because they're all buddies. Watts, Ford, Schreier, and Howard all went to NYU together, as a matter of fact.
I had no
And
idea.
yeah, neither did I. And then they go on to, I think it was John Watts that explained this, and of course he did the most recent Spider-Man movies. This show is made by friends, about friends, starring friends. And I thought that was kind of a fun little phrase to
Yeah.
coin there about it.
Mhm.
And John Watts goes on to explain that he pitched this show to John Favreau on the set of Spider-Man: No Way Home, And Favreau was basically immediately on board. He's like, "So you want me to produce this?" And and Dave Filoni could help. It's just kind of like, yes, let's make it happen, which I found encouraging
Oh,
uh,
yeah.
on there. And then Bryce Dallas Howard was talking about how she learned about this while she was working on season 3 of The Mandalorian, and there was this entire like previs room where they were making the art and stuff for Skeleton Crew, like on the third floor or wherever, where they're working on it. And so she learned about there and she was just amazed with how it looked. And the people working on it were like, yeah, this is so good. Um, so, it was just kind of fun to see their enthusiasm that way.
For sure, and again, it was just that much more encouraging to me to hear this, and it just adds to the excitement even more, and I love Bryce Dallas Howard, just period, and everything that she's done with The Mandalorian and, all of her contributions thus far, so and it was really cool to hear about their, shared experiences, as you said. I had no idea that
Yeah.
they all knew each other that well.
Yeah. And then David Lowery, apparently, again, he got drawn into the Mutual Admiration Society that they had going on here.
Yeah.
And they approached him, and he had just been working with Jude Law and a bunch of kids on a movie. And it took me a while to figure out what they were talking about because I wasn't aware of this. And apparently it was the Peter Pan and Wendy movie that was out in the not too
Okay.
distant past.
I wondered
And
about that. All right, and I didn't
well,
do any research, so
yeah, I basically pulled up Lowry and Law's IMDb pages and compared them
ah,
until I found something that was recent and that would
good
have been
call.
with kids. And yeah, and so that's what I settled on. And that's what I'm assuming they meant. And then the last thing I want to highlight from this little featurette, which is about what, 10, 12 minutes, something around there.
Yeah, I'm
Um,
loving in some change, I think.
yeah, is that they went back to a bunch of old pirate serials from the 20s and 30s to for the research on some of this. And I was like, well, that's an incredibly like George Lucas thing to do.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it is.
I mean, that's kind of how he drew his inspiration and made his stuff. So I was
Exactly.
appreciative of that.
Mhm. Yeah, same.
Okay. So yeah, that's what we got on Skeleton Crew, and it's right around the corner. It'll be airing on December 3rd. We're really close, and yeah, I mean, you know, again, we talked about this just recently, a couple of weeks ago on the news, and that we just weren't super excited for you. We're going to watch it, but I'm very much more interested in it now. So I'm glad I got to
I
see all
am
that stuff.
too.
I think they did a good job kicking the hype train into full gear.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay. Well, the other big bit of news that we had this week was the announcement of Volume 3 of Star Wars Visions. And
Yeah.
this was revealed at the 2024 Disney APAC Content Showcase, which, if I understand correctly, occurred in Singapore. And it's not a D23, but it's a way to kind of highlight stuff coming up in Star Wars in the next year. And that's what they did. And so we're getting volume 3 sometime in 2025. We don't have a specific date. We're getting 9 brand new episodes, but this time they're doing what they did in season 1 by going all anime. And we've got returning studios of Kamikaze Duga, Cinema, Citrus Company, Production IG, and Trigger, and then 5 new studios, which are Anima, David Production, Polygon Pictures, Project Studio Q, and I'm not sure if it's WIT or WIT Studio. It's on all caps. That's why I say that.
Mhm.
Um, the one I'm most excited about is Kamikaze Duga because they produced the Duel from season 1,
Yeah.
and that was my favorite there, and I was very, very taken with that. So I'm glad to see they're coming back. And of course, I remember the others as well. I mean, the twins, I was not particularly excited about what that Trigger did, but fine, they're coming back. The Ninth Jedi was good. The Village
Mhm.
Bride was okay. That Cinema Citrus Company did, but I really don't know anything about the other anime studios. I'm just not up on what they all do. But are any of those new ones familiar to you?
They're not. If I were to do a little bit of research and see what other kinds of things that they've produced, I might say, "Oh, okay, I'm familiar with that," but I haven't dove into that at all, but I'm with you on Kamikaze Duga doing, returning because the duel is definitely, as you said, just one of the highlights of all of the visions, And
Mhm.
I think that a lot of Star Wars fans definitely agree with that, and there was a lot of things that came out of that because of that particular anime. So I'm so here for this. I'm very excited for this one.
Yeah. I mean, we don't know what story they're going to do, but I certainly hope it's tied in some way to the duel. That would be a lot
Yeah,
of fun to see. I'd be super
for
excited to
sure.
see that. So, all right. Well, that's it. That is this week's Star Wars news. Thank you all for joining us here on Podcast Stardust as we went through it. We hope you enjoyed it. And if so, then go ahead and hit that subscribe button if you would on your podcaster of choice. And, like, rate, review, that type of thing. We love that when you all interact with us and support us in that fashion. We love getting reviews that we can read on the podcast. We had one recently from Kindle that was great. And then once you've done all that, I'd like to remind you, you can find our entire catalog of shows over on nurturesapp.com, including all previous 810 episodes. We've been around for a while now. And
Mhm.
the other great shows that are there: Agents of Shield Case Files, Animaniacast, Brews and Blasters, Dork Lair, Doomcast, Enjoy Stuff, Love, Death, and Robots Plus, Superhero Suite, and Warp Trails. And once you've had a chance to check them out, then make sure you look for us on other areas of the internet, which Jay is going to tell you about right now. Go ahead, Jay.
All right. So we are very easily found on Instagram and Facebook at Podcast Stardust. And we also have our trusty Pinterest page with lots of boards over there. And then we have two YouTube outlets. So we're on the traditional YouTube as well as YouTube Music. So please head over to both of those, like, subscribe, share those out. And those also support interaction. So as Dennis said, we'd love to hear from y'all. So please head over there and just interact with us there. Another place you can interact with us is on our Discord room, which is part of the Retros App Discord server. So if you head to the link in our show notes, boom, you are right to where you need to go, just like hyperspace. And you don't even need to get on a ship to do it. And we also have a T Public store with 7 different show logo designs available with all of the Podcast Stardust goodness you can handle. So if you are up for a closet refresh or some new home goods, you can once again hit up the link in our show notes to check that out.
All right. You want to fill in everybody what you got going on in cosplay?
Absolutely. So you can check out all of my cosplays over on my Instagram, which is at j.snipscosplay. And I do have GalaxyCon Columbus coming up at the first weekend in December. So I will be out there taking lots of pictures and meeting Hayden Christensen. So I will definitely be posting some new things over there. And you can catch me as Ahsoka, 2 different versions of Hera, the fourth sister, original concept Mandalorian, and much, much more. So once again, that's at j.snipscosplay on Instagram.
All right. So, upcoming on the show on Monday, we are looking at episode 16 from season 1 of The Clone Wars. And then on Wednesday, it is the part 11, which is our final entry in our series covering the Phantom Menace for its 25th anniversary. So, make sure you come check that out. So, with that said, thanks for listening to episode 811 of Podcast Artists, everyone. Have a great weekend. And until next time, may the Force be with you.